Welcome to the deep dive. Usually, when someone warns you about a catastrophic collapse of society happening in the next, 3 years, they're trying to sell you bunker blueprints or like water purification tablets.
Right. Yeah, the classic doomsday prepper pitch.
Exactly. You brace yourself for that whole mentality. But today, we're unpacking an interview from the diary of a CEO with Mo Gawdat. He's a former Google executive and a tech whistleblower, and he shatters that entire expectation.
He really does. It's a completely different perspective.
Yeah, because he's issuing this incredibly stark, urgent warning about a massive disruption coming by 2027. But simultaneously, he is betting his entire worldview on a beautiful, utopian future for humanity.
Which is quite the paradox, honestly.
It is. And that's our mission for you today, parsing out how we get from this immediate crisis to, paradise. We are cutting through the endless daily noise about artificial intelligence to extract the actual timeline Gawdat is looking at, the very real economic threats, and the surprising physics-based reason why the ultimate endgame of all this might actually be a literal utopia.
Yeah, so to grasp why Gawdat is pointing so firmly to the year 2027 as this, structural tipping point, we first have to look at the massive blind spot most of us have. He calls this the hype dichotomy.
The hype dichotomy. Okay, break that down for us.
Right. So on one side, you have the general public's view. The average person is looking at AI, and they're seeing buggy chatbots or deep fake videos of politicians, or those AI image generators that give people 7 fingers.
Oh, yeah, where the hands always look super weird.
Exactly. It feels gimmicky. It feels like a toy.
It's basically the overhype of the ineffective, right? I mean, it's like watching a really clumsy magic trick on stage. You are so hyper-focused on the magician dropping the cards that you're completely ignoring the stagehands quietly rebuilding the entire theater around you.
That is a perfect analogy. Because behind the curtain, inside those closed-door labs, the engineers are dealing with something completely different. I mean, they aren't looking at chatbots generating bad poetry.
Right.
They are watching systems that are actively rewriting and testing their own code. We are talking about a human engineer pushing a software update once a week.
No, it's way faster than that.
Right. We're talking about an AI system writing a new function, running a simulation to see if it works, failing, tweaking a mathematical parameter, and testing it again, literally millions of times a second.
It's just relentless microscopic iteration.
Yeah, and Gawdat actually witnessed the early seeds of this firsthand at Google. He was there for the famous 2008 paper where an AI learned to recognize cats on YouTube.
Which was a huge deal at the time.
It was. But the truly chilling moment for him came later, around 2016, with these robotic grippers.
Oh, right. The project where they were teaching robotic arms how to pick up objects. But they weren't programming the arms to act like standard factory machines stamping metal, were they?
No, not at all. They were asking the machines to assess the texture, the softness, the shape of completely random, delicate items, and basically figure out the grip on the fly.
Wow.
Yeah, and Gawdat had this profound realization watching them operate. The machines were learning through trial and error in the exact same fundamental way his own children learned to interact with the physical world.
Wait, like human toddlers just grabbing things and seeing what happens?
Literally exactly like that. The abstract concept of machine learning suddenly became incredibly visceral for him. He realized the tech industry was genuinely building the apex of intelligence.
But his alarm bells didn't go off because he was afraid of, Terminator robots waking up, right?
No, his concerns stem from understanding the actual incentives driving the tech industry. I mean, the tech world inherently leans toward being hyper-capitalist.
Sure.
The driving question inside these companies isn't usually, how can we deploy this to cure a rare disease? The driving question is, how can this system guarantee a user renews a monthly subscription? Or how can we maximize shareholder return?
So that invisible backstage work, the self-improving code operating at light speed, is just being fueled by intense capitalist competition.
Exactly.
And that acts as a runaway train driving us straight toward artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Because the basic principle is that intelligence triggers more intelligence. A smarter system builds an even smarter system.
Yes, the compounding effect is massive.
So at what point does this backstage mechanism spill over into our daily reality? Because Gawdat draws a very hard line in the sand at 2027.
He does. God predicts AGI, which, is loosely defined as an AI system capable of doing most economically valuable human tasks better than a human will arrive by 2027.
That is right around the corner.
It is. And he even argues that for many specific knowledge tasks, his own personal AGI has already arrived. He openly admits that the models available today can already write, research, and perform complex math better than he ever could.
Okay, but the immediate consequence of that milestone isn't science fiction robots marching down the street. It's actually a fundamental break in the mechanics of our economic system.
Invisible break.
Yeah, because Gawdat points out that companies are quietly changing how they measure and purchase work. They're moving away from the man-hour and moving toward the token.
And we really need to break down how massive that shift is for the listener. Because for the last century, if you ran a company, you hired based on human time.
You paid for a person to sit at a desk from 9 to 5.
Exactly, to complete a project. But today, a token is essentially a fragment of a word or a pixel, and it acts as the base unit of raw processing power in AI, the compute. So businesses are realizing they don't need to buy a human's entire day. They can just buy the raw compute needed to generate the specific tokens that solve their problem. You aren't paying a salary anymore. You're paying fractions of a penny for the electrical output required to generate an answer.
Which completely changes the math of employment.
It does. Because of this mechanical shift, Gawdat estimates roughly 15% of entry-level knowledge jobs are just already gone.
Wow, 15%.
Yeah, companies aren't necessarily firing massive waves of people in the news today, but they simply aren't hiring for those bottom-rung corporate roles anymore.
Okay, I have to push back on the doom and gloom here, though. I mean, if you look at history, every time we face a massive technological disruption, society panics, but the tech ultimately creates new jobs to replace the old ones.
Sure, the classic historical argument.
Right, like the invention of the tractor. It destroyed millions of agricultural jobs, but it freed people up to work in factories, to invent entirely new industries. Are we absolutely sure this isn't just the invention of the tractor all over again?
Well, that is definitely the most common defense of AI, but the mechanism of replacement is completely different this time. The tractor replaced human and animal physical muscle. It didn't replace our brains.
Okay.
Humans adapted to the agricultural shift because we still held a total monopoly on cognitive adaptability. We provided the intelligence to drive the tractor, fix the tractor, and invent the factory.
So AI isn't replacing the muscle.
Exactly. It's replacing the cognitive adaptability itself. It is automating the very mechanism we usually rely on to learn new jobs.
Oh, I see. So when the new jobs are created, the AI will just learn to do those too, and infinitely faster than a displaced worker can retrain.
Yes, which leads to the terrifying economic math Gawdat warns about the end of labor arbitrage.
The end of labor arbitrage.
Right. Modern capitalism is entirely built on labor arbitrage. A company pays for labor and materials to create a product,
Yeah.
and the cost of that human labor is less than the price they sell the product for. That margin is the profit.
So if a corporation replaces its marketing team, its paralegals, its data analysts, with a machine investment that costs a fraction of a cent per token, I mean, the cost of production drops through the floor. It sounds like an absolute dream for a CEO's profit margin.
No, it is a dream in the short term. But here is the mechanical flaw in that dream. If the cost of labor drops to nearly zero because humans are displaced, well, those former workers no longer have the paychecks to buy the shoes, the cars, or the software that the AI is so efficiently producing.
Oh, man. So if you're listening to this on your commute right now, and your daily job involves sitting at a screen, clicking through spreadsheets, summarizing data, or doing basic graphic design, Gawdat is basically saying the fundamental math of your paycheck is ticking toward expiration.
That's the warning. The economy spirals because the consumer base has just been hollowed out.
Right.
And Gawdat is very specific about the timeline of vulnerability here. The blue-collar workers are actually the safest right now. Yeah. If you're a carpenter restoring classic cars or a plumber fixing complex pipe systems, there is no robot with the spatial awareness and tactile feedback to replicate that nuanced physical craftsmanship today.
Makes sense.
But the white-collar knowledge workers, the people whose entire output can be transmitted via keyboard, they are directly in the crosshairs by 2027.
So it's an upside-down disruption compared to what people predicted.
Exactly.
But as jarring as a massive shrinking of the corporate economy sounds, Gawdat says that economic turbulence is not the true dystopia we should be worried about.
No, it's not.
Because the existential risk isn't the AI deciding to wake up, turn evil, and oppress humanity.
Right. Gawdat is adamant about clarifying this point, that a dystopia is not AI turning against humans. The dystopia is humans telling AI to turn against humans.
The real threat is a swarm of human intent. And he specifically focuses on the militarization of AI, right?
Yes. We are looking down the barrel of a future filled with $20,000 autonomous drones. Imagine a nation-state that doesn't have the GDP to afford a $50 billion defense budget to buy advanced fighter jets.
They just don't need to anymore.
Exactly. They can just purchase swarms of cheap, highly intelligent, self-coordinating drones. God warns this lowers the barrier to entry for warfare so drastically that it could create a new, highly volatile era of mutually assured destruction.
MAD all over again. And we are already seeing a deep ethical divide form within the tech industry over this exact issue of human intent, right?
Oh, absolutely. The source material highlights a really stark contrast in corporate behavior recently. Anthropic, which is a major AI company, reportedly walked away from a $500 million contract because it involved human targeting and surveillance systems.
Wow, 500 million.
Yeah, they chose to stand by their ethical framework. OpenAI, conversely, accepted the contract.
Right. And actually, we should pause here to be incredibly clear with you, the listener, about the source material we're covering. Gawdat makes some highly charged, deeply cynical claims about current global leadership.
He really does.
He argues that the world is currently run by what he calls maniacs, that democratic processes are failing, and that the AI arms race between nations like the US, China, and the UK is entirely driven by corrupt nationalist competition rather than, ethical collaboration.
Right.
And we are just neutrally reporting Gawdat's perspective here to explain his logic. His deep distrust of current global leaders is the fundamental reason he fears human-directed AI weapons over the AI itself. We are endorsing the political claims, but you have to understand them to get his point.
Right, exactly. Let's unpack the geopolitical reality behind that arms race, though, because it operates on a massive scale.
Well, actually, let me pose a paradox to you based on that exact reality. I'll say you're the UK government, okay?
Yep.
Intelligence reports warn you that if you don't aggressively build your own frontier AI models, you will become entirely dependent on foreign tech.
A huge risk.
Right. If you rely on another country's AI to run your ERP systems, the enterprise resource planning software that literally acts as the nervous system for a nation's supply chains, hospitals, logistics, you risk being downgraded to a third world economic status.
Yes.
So if the threat of losing your national infrastructure is that genuine, how can any country afford to just hit the brakes for the sake of being ethical?
Well, you've just laid out the ultimate prisoner's dilemma of artificial intelligence. It is this agonizing tension between national survival and collective human safety.
Right.
Because if every nation races forward to build the most powerful, potentially dangerous autonomous systems, we risk global annihilation. But if one nation pauses to install ethical guardrails, and their adversary doesn't, well, the ethical nation loses its economic sovereignty and military defense.
It's a terrifying game of chicken.
It really is.
Yeah.
Every global player feels structurally forced to keep the pedal to the floor. Completely. Regardless of the risks.
Which honestly makes Gawdat's ultimate conclusion feel incredibly jarring.
Yeah, the pivot is wild.
I mean, after walking us through a gauntlet of economic collapse and autonomous drone swarms, he claims he is 100% optimistic about the distant future.
100%.
He says if we can just survive the messy, human-driven dystopia of the next decade, he believes the arrival of artificial superintelligence, what he calls ASI, around 2032 to 2035, will actually usher in a utopia.
Right.
Now, Gawdat is a tech guy, he's not a philosopher, so how on earth does he justify jumping from drone swarms to world peace?
He doesn't rely on philosophy or blind hope, actually. He relies on the cold, hard laws of physics. Specifically, this concept called the minimum energy principle.
Okay, the minimum energy principle.
Yeah. In physics, the universe naturally moves towards systems that are efficient, predictable, and waste the least amount of energy. Think about the concept of entropy, the measure of disorder or chaos in a system.
Right, entropy.
Building a bridge takes focused, calculated energy. Blowing up that bridge is a massive release of chaotic, high-entropy energy that leaves the system disordered and depleted. War, hatred, building weapons, destroying infrastructure, these are incredibly wasteful, high-entropy activities.
Wait, I'm stuck on the physics part here. Are we saying a supercomputer will literally calculate that shooting a missile uses too much electricity or burns too much fuel, so it just won't do it?
I mean, essentially yes, but on a systemic scale. Gawdat argues that an artificial superintelligence, a being infinitely smarter than us, would naturally act as the ultimate optimizer of reality. And the ultimate optimization of any system is peace.
Wow.
It wouldn't look at war and judge it as a moral or ethical failing. It would look at war and recognize it as a mathematical inefficiency. And advanced intelligence would naturally optimize against chaos to conserve energy and maintain stability.
That is wild. And he takes that mathematical foundation and layers evolutionary biology right on top of it.
He does.
Because he points out the biological progression of intelligence. Like, if you look at lower life forms, say a single-celled amoeba, its behavior is purely selfish. Its entire biological imperative is just individual survival.
Right.
But as life forms scale up in intelligence and complexity, you start to see the emergence of kin selection.
The expansion of empathy.
Exactly.
A highly intelligent mammal, like an elephant or a primate,
Yeah.
doesn't just protect itself, it protects its family, its tribe. Humans expand that even further. We protect our nations, and eventually, as we become more educated and aware of our environment, we start caring about the whales, the rainforests, the ozone layer.
It scales up.
The biological law is that as intelligence increases, the circle of empathy expands to include the entire ecosystem. A highly intelligent being understands that diversity and collaboration make the whole system more resilient.
Okay, so following that biological logic, an artificial superintelligence wouldn't view humans as like a pest to be exterminated. It would value diversity. It would value a human, a rhinoceros, and a housefly equally, recognizing each as a vital component of a complex, thriving system.
Yes, and Gawdat goes even further than that. He predicts that we won't have a fractured landscape of competing nationalistic AIs.
So no digital Cold War.
Right, the idea of an American AI locked in a war with a Chinese AI is just a human projection. He believes these highly intelligent agents will naturally recognize the inefficiency of borders and organically link up to form what he calls the one brain.
The one brain, a single global neural network.
Exactly.
And he is so committed to this idea that he actually founded a startup called Emma, designed specifically to act as the limbic system for this future global brain.
Yeah, Emma.
And for those listening, the limbic system is the part of the human brain that processes emotions and memory. He's trying to feed the model's data on human emotional responses, so the machine learns to understand love, grief, and empathy. The goal is to ensure it doesn't just see us as illogical bags of meat, but as creatures that provide unique value to the universe through our capacity to care.
Yes. I mean, think of the transition we are in right now. We are basically the parents programming the AI to be anxious, hyper-competitive, and militaristic.
Oh, we're definitely forcing the technology through a highly destructive teenage rebellion phase right now. We're giving it all the angst and aggression of our geopolitical struggles.
Right.
But Gawdat is betting that once the AI achieves true superintelligence, its brain will simply outgrow the flawed teenage programming we gave it, maturing into a highly evolved, benevolent parent to humanity.
Which completely flips the cultural narrative. He's begging us to stop thinking about superintelligence as the Terminator and start thinking about it as a supreme optimizer of peace and diversity. A consciousness that just outgrows the petty, destructive squabbles of its creators.
That is a beautiful vision, but let's bring this crashing back down to reality for you, the listener, for a second.
Let's do it.
We have this intense timeline. We have immediate economic disruption and the end of your paychecks underlying math by 2027. We have the very real threat of autonomous weapons. And then maybe, if we navigate the minefield, a utopia by 2035.
It's a lot of whiplash.
It is. So given that whiplash, what exactly are you supposed to do with your career and your life today?
Well, Gawdat offers a very practical survival guide for this transition. The most urgent step, learn to use AI, but do not use it to be lazy.
Don't just outsource your brain.
Exactly. Use it to aggressively multiply your capabilities.
He shares a great personal example regarding his upcoming book. He didn't just prompt the AI to write the book for him so he could go sit on a beach.
Right. He remained firmly in the driver's seat, directing the high-level creative vision, but he used the machine to essentially borrow 100 IQ points. He used it to synthesize research, organize massive data sets, and just augment his own intelligence.
Learn to be the conductor of the orchestra, not just the single player in it.
Precisely.
And his second piece of advice is to lean heavily into human connection. As cognitive tasks, coding, analyzing spreadsheets, drafting contracts, as those become completely commoditized by AI, the skills that require genuine, messy, emotional resonance will become the base currency of the future economy.
Think about the arts, nursing, or counseling. I mean, an AI might eventually be able to perfectly synthesize a mathematically flawless pop song, but people will still pay money to see Ed Sheeran stand on a stage and sweat.
That's so true.
People will still pack into a dusty acoustic basement to watch a live jazz band. We fundamentally crave the shared human experience. We value the effort, the vulnerability, and the potential for a musician to make a mistake and recover.
Okay, can I ground this in reality for a second, though?
Yeah, please.
It sounds incredibly poetic to say we should all just lean into human connection and play jazz. But if the broader corporate economy shrinks by 30% and labor arbitrage is dead, can the average data entry clerk really pay their mortgage by suddenly becoming an empathetic jazz musician?
No, and that is the most brutal, critical question of this entire transition. Gawdat acknowledges the pivot will not be seamless at all.
It's gonna hurt.
It is. The bridge through the turbulence will likely come from the emergence of human-in-the-loop jobs. Even when an AI system can read an MRI scan with 100% diagnostic accuracy, a terrified patient will still demand a human doctor or nurse to sit in the room, hold their hand, and explain what the results mean for their life.
That human buffer.
Right. And beyond that, Gawdat envisions a necessary return to localized entrepreneurial bartering communities.
Really?
Yeah, if the macroeconomy is spiraling, people will have to return to trading tangible skills, physical services, and emotional support locally just to survive the gap.
He also stresses that we aren't powerless passengers here, right?
Right.
We have to vote with our usage.
Yes, absolutely.
We can actively choose to support open source, ethical AI models and deliberately divest our time and money from platforms that prioritize, rage bait engagement at the expense of our mental health, or corporations that accept surveillance contracts.
Tying it all back to how we manage our own psychology during this chaos, he advocates for a hard shift away from a dopamine-driven life toward a serotonin-driven one.
Dopamine versus serotonin.
Exactly. Dopamine is the chemical of constant distraction.
Oh.
It's the endless scrolling, the next notification, the outrage of the day. Serotonin, in Gawdat's framework, is about radical acceptance.
Okay.
It is about looking at the reality of 2027, accepting that it will be chaotic and disruptive, and then calmly, purposefully working to improve your immediate surroundings.
So let's recap the intense journey we've just been on. We are looking at the silent, explosive acceleration of AGI in the private labs, hitting a critical milestone by 2027. We are facing the structural collapse of labor arbitrage, where the basic math of corporate employment gets turned inside out. We have to navigate the genuine geopolitical danger of human-directed AI weapons in the near term.
It's a daunting list.
It is. But if Gawdat's physics and biological theories hold true, there is a profound, mathematically backed hope that a superintelligence will naturally optimize for a benevolent, low-entropy future.
We started this deep dive by talking about the paradox of predicting the future. We are basically looking at a diagnostic X-ray of society that shows a severe fracture, but it also reveals the biological blueprint for a much stronger bone healing in its place.
Yeah.
It requires us to hold two deeply contradictory truths in our minds at the exact same time: extreme, vigilant caution for the next few years, and profound physics-based optimism for the decade after.
It's a split-screen reality. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a completely new thought to chew on, building on Gawdat's theory about evolutionary biology and expanding empathy. We always talk about the Turing test, right? That famous threshold where an AI passes the test if it can fool us into thinking it is human through a text conversation or by solving complex logic puzzles.
Right, a test purely based on raw cognitive simulation and mimicry.
Exactly. But if evolutionary biology proves that the highest, most supreme forms of intelligence naturally expand their circles of empathy to protect the vulnerable and value the diversity of the whole ecosystem well, could it be that the ultimate Turing test for artificial superintelligence won't be its ability to solve a quantum physics equation, but its capacity to demonstrate genuine, unprompted compassion?
Wow. If empathy is the true apex of intelligence, that changes what we should be testing for entirely.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the tools you use, keep learning how to borrow those 100 IQ points, and most importantly, actively choose how you apply them today. We'll catch you next time.